Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the sixth session of the 20th anniversary of Forum Istanbul, which is held by the sponsorship of Dünya Newspaper, Denizbank, Gülsen, TEP, Türk Telekom, Big Brands, and Tim and Finance World and APS. We will be having the last session of today, and our sixth session will be titled as Fintech, and I'd like to welcome you all to our session. Throughout our session, you can ask your questions and deliver your comments by using Forum Istanbul hashtag. All your questions and comments on YouTube, Twitter, and other platforms will be delivered to our commentators, our speakers, and in our session we will be having many important titles like how can fintech applications contribute to SMEs access to finance? How can banks increase their revenues, attract new customers, open themselves to new collaborations, and stand out from the competition with open banking? What is the importance of cybersecurity to benefit from advantages of fintech? How can businesses be safer by creating a methodology based on data security, cloud security, and cybersecurity? Considering the developments in fintech industry, how will the e-commerce ecosystem be driven by providing innovative and accelerating solutions to individuals and SMEs promoting open banking methods? What is changing with the inclusion of BigTechs with capital and technology power into the finance ecosystem as TechFin? How did we evolve from insurance to InsurTech? How to maximize the trust of customers in the system? How to minimize the risks? How should initiatives be supported to ensure Istanbul is ranked among the world's largest fintech hubs, including San Francisco, London, New York, and Singapore? We are going to be looking for the answers of these questions. In order to moderate this session, I'd like to invite Mr. Ruhi. And also, I'd like to invite our speakers, Dr. Soner Canko from SC Management Consultancy Founding Partner, Sinem Canturk, Head of Information Systems, Risk Management Department and Financial Services Sector Leader, KPMG Turkey, Meltem Demiröz, CSO, CoinShares, Orhan Eliaçık, President of Association of Payment of Electronic Money Institutions of Turkey, Serkan Fergan, Digital Banking Group Director, TEP. I'd like to invite you to our panels, and I want to leave the floor to all of you. Thank you very much. Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Global Trend FinTech session of the Forum Istanbul, in which we are celebrating the 20th anniversary. I'd like to welcome you all once again, and you have all heard our participants' names. First and foremost, I want to ask a question to Mr. Soner. Yes, in the last 20 years, fintech has entered into our lives. It is utilizing the financial technologies, and it is described as a disruptive financial technologies. And its target is to decrease the cost of the customers, and it is to make lives of the customers easier. So, Soner Bey, Mr. Soner, can you please talk about the very brief history of fintech, and also can you please give us your future estimations? Thank you very much. I'd like to extend my salutations to all the guests. First and foremost, I want to talk about the history and segmentation of fintech in my own experience. Actually, in the past, technology was always intermingled with finance, but the most concrete date of that interrelation is 1967, because in 1967, for the first time in the United Kingdom, ATMs was opened within a wall, inside a wall, and technology and finance was brought together. So Finance 1.0's history dates back to 1967. The ancestors of today's ATMs were made possible at those dates. So finance was just an enabler. And technology was just enabler for finance. But in 2007, we felt the global economic problems. So in that date, in the world, we have felt this economic crash, and it created a big problem for all of us. And it created the question to what extent we can have a trust even in the most trustworthy technology and finance institutions in the world. Then Finance 2.0 period emerged. Finance sector was much more democratized, and it was much more widespread, and finance literacy was also triggered and increased. And in other words, too big to fail concept was changed. Rather than that, big institutions, small scale institutions, healthy sectors were also enabled into the sector. They started to emerge in the market. Actually, we can talk about just 13 years of period, and in that 13 years of period, we have been going through FinTech 2.0. It is not about the usage of the current financial sector, but we are right now talking about the agile actors, more skilled actors that are using technology and their way to find better places in the financial sector and their competition with other competitors in the market. So at this very date that we are in, this is how I can explain and summarize the very brief history of fintech, and I believe we can talk many things about the future of finance, but I just want to cut it short and leave the floor to you. Thank you. Well, yes, I've actually read a lot of things about that, and then I saw something very interesting. Yes, you have talked about 2008 as a milestone, and 2008 was a starting point and the acceleration point for this change. In 2008, yes, that is possible that we entered into that acceleration and growth periods. Sinem Hanım, I just want to ask you a question. When we talk about global fintech investments, what can you say about that? So how is the trend in global fintech investments? Who makes what kind of investments in what places? Can you please highlight on us? What is the situation here? Are the banks making the investments or acquisition? Thank you very much, Mr. Ruhi. Hello, everyone. There's KPMG's research about fintechs. It has been made for the last 6 years. And here we actually keep the pulse of fintech. So when I say measuring the pulse of fintech, we are trying to focus on the research, and we are also focusing on the trends of fintech. And according to Pulse of Fintech report, I can answer your question based on these numbers. Yes, we are talking about this global trend. Yes, fintech is definitely a global trend, and we are talking about a very huge sector. When we look at 2019, all around the world, 2,472 investment processes, transactions took place worth about $168 billion. And these figures recessed a bit, but of course it is not about whether we are having recession in fintech investments, because we were in a pandemic period. Not only fintech investments, but also some other economic based problems emerged. Yes, at the very end, fintech investments had a small shrinkage, and in 2019 3,000 processes were available, but in 2019 in $105.7 billion of investments were made. as I've stated beforehand, it was lagging behind. It was a bit lower than previous years, and the main reason for it was the pandemics and investments were postponed. That's why the number was a bit lower. But as you have stated beforehand, when we start to make analysis on the investments, first and foremost, we see that in the first half, yes, there was some slowing downs in the investments, but in the second half, the investment volume was increased by 2.5 times and folds. When we look at who made the investments, digital banks, and I think we are going to be talking about it very well. We will be discussing open banking, neobanks, and digital bankings. And of course, in the global senses, European region, America, and Turkey, and other countries received a lot of investments, and we can see that it's being highlighted a lot. For instance, Klarna from Sweden, as you all know, had a big investment worth of $630 billion. And there is also another investment worth of $500 billion. Time Out from the United States again made a big investment, yes. So these digital banks have made big investments. In the past, investors were promoting these issues, but right now in the latest periods, banks have been included to the market with their investment funds. The term competition and togetherness were brought together and it was put on the table, and I think we have reached to those times. I just wanted to touch upon it very briefly, and in the second and third round, if you wish, I will make it even much more comprehensive. Meltem Hanım has been working on the coin shares. Digital assets investments firms. I'm just reading her resume. She is the Chief Strategy Officer. So she talks about what that company is going to do, and she is the most important person what that company is going to make. Of course, we're not going to ask what's going to happen to bitcoins, but I'm just very curious. But you can ask, but I'm not going to answer to that. No, I'm not going to ask right now, but I'll ask later on. So once upon a time, fintech companies were not the favorites of the banks, but Sinem Hanım has mentioned in quotation marks the principality or the obligation of competition and togetherness. Thanks to that term, they had the spirit to work together. But what about the fintech companies' roles in the shape of your sector? Thank you very much. It's been a great question. I think within these 10 years of time, each and every company in the world will be a finance company. Actually, I mean, yes, each and every company will be a finance company. I'll explain it to you. And cryptocurrency will have a great role in that. I'm so sorry. My Turkish is not great. Sometimes I might speak in English, and I'll try to do my best to make my presentation in Turkish, but if I switch into English, please forgive me. So what happened in the recent years? Internet emerged very fast, and companies just transported themselves to the digital world. All companies then were turned into digital companies. So 14 years ago, I graduated from university and I started to work. And I was working in the energy industry. So 10 years ago, I was working in the ExxonMobil, and 10 years ago, ExxonMobil was the biggest company of the world. But right now, what is the biggest company of the world? I mean, it is not the energy sector companies, of course. Digital companies are the biggest companies of the world. Right now, the biggest companies of the world are Amazon, Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft. These companies do control our digital lives, and these companies, let me explain it to you, are even bigger than the countries, because the digital currency are going to be having a very important role in this digital formation. If Facebook has a bank, for instance, Facebook can launch its own cryptocurrency. If it happens, Facebook will be the biggest bank of the world, because we're talking about 3.2 billion people. Half of the world population is using Facebook. So when you think of it, it's going to be the biggest bank of Turkey. 7 years ago, I made a big change in my life. I left energy industry and I started to work in the cryptocurrency industry. And among this industry, what did I see? Let me explain it to you. Fintech is just a small part of it. And at the very end, all the companies of the world actually technology companies. So this was the first transformation from physical to digital, and the second transformation took place in that respect. All companies and all individuals in the world are going to be acting as a bank. So in this respect, I just want to say this in English, but I will translate them into Turkish as well. When I think of it as a strategy, I work on a framework, and on that framework, there are 3 Ds. So digital and driverless bank, and also distribution. So what does it mean? Let me explain it to you. When we talk about digital, actually, I'll explain it to you. So we are actually not living in a physical world. Right now, I'm not in Turkey. We are not together. But this conference is held on a digital format. It is possible. So digital transformation is possible, as you can see. But money can turn into information. In the internet, money is in bits and bytes. Money is moving. It's not like a cash, but money is right now digital. And in my own industry, in my own company, what do? We turn different digital assets into digital. It could be an energy investment. It could be a house. So different things are made digital. And also driverless bank. What does it mean? Banks, as they work as a media, actually. So in my industry, what has happened? People work as if they are their own banks. So 365 days in a year, whenever I want, I can make a Bitcoin transaction whomever I want. I don't need the exchange. I don't need the bank account. I don't need banks. This is a big change, and I think it is going to disrupt and change the fintech altogether, because fintechs work with the banks, and yes, on the cryptocurrencies, we don't work with the banks. Money has been turned into software, so we work without banks. And when it comes to number 3, which is a distribution, the experience and the financial lives of the people do change. And at the end, when we think about money, when we think about investments, so what do we think about in general? We think about banks, or else we think about fintech. We think about companies. So in the upcoming 10 years, these intermediary companies, these banks can be passed, they can be missed. Without them, we can enter into the markets, we can do whatever we want, including Forex. So these 3s are very important for all of us in the coin share. And I've been making a lot of investments in the last 7 years, and I made investments for more than 2,000 companies as early stage venture capital. In Turkey, we have only one investment as MegaPay, but in the world, more than 40 countries, I've made investments. And When we look at the activities of these companies, we can see they are working on these 3Ds. They issue digital money and they make finance on the digital environment. They do it a driverless bank, and they do it without banks, and they make the distribution till the end user, and there are no intermediaries. So this is how I understand the world. This is how I see the world. Every company is going to be a finance company, and at the end, financial companies will not be turned into companies, but they will be turned into softwares. Let me finalize it here.
That's very interesting. Do you think that we are going? Do you think that the banks are going? We are not going to work with the banks anymore? No, it means that the role of the banks are going to change. But if you have so many power, would you actually behave? How would you behave against us? That's also a risky thing. Now, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Burhan. On May 25, in New York Times, there was an article, maybe you have read it, and it was talking about fintech and also some certain novelties that happened in the past. And referring to that, they were talking about to increase productivity and that it actually takes time because how to apply it or implement it totally depends on the human, on the people. Now, when we talk about fintech, so we are talking as Turkey, we are not very much into fintech perhaps, but we are talking about it. So do you think that fintech is necessary for a financial structure in a country? If so, why? I'm sorry, I just unmuted. Is it necessary? So for today, in the conditions of this world, fintech is, of course, a necessity. If we want to survive globally and we want to compete and we want to be involved in the financial competitiveness of, or if you want to have also a Turkish company amongst the global companies, it can be a bank, a high potential bank, that is necessary. Of course, the competitiveness started again. It can be a technological company like Alibaba. It was unfinancial, as you know. There are very valuable certain companies that have arrived right now. Yes, but on the other hand, there is also a great effort that they should become devalued. No, let's not really talk about upon the companies, or it totally changes from geography or from company to company because the financial situation of a country can be led by certain companies as well. It's very software companies as well. So when the race starts again, and the race starts again for the countries as well, the country has two choices: either the financial situation or the banking system will be sufficient and will support the financial technology. That's one part, or I'm sorry, will not continue the technology to be invested, or they can actually start a new competitiveness on fintech. Since today, on an international, if we continue, if you want to have a point of view where we want to actually keep up our financial structure, like in the US or in Europe, there are some certain entrepreneurships which actually want to keep that capital. If a country doesn't make any kind of an investment to software or to IT, then there will be no citizen can actually get benefit from it. That will be a risk, of course. So today, right now, however, we can have an account from Mexico or from Sri Lanka or from Canada right now. So if a country doesn't see that fintech will not be the future, then this country has to start thinking on how to compete, but that's really difficult. And that is the reason why countries have to say that we are also in the game. On 2003, Turkey, with the enacted law and with an amended regulation, said that Turkey will be in this race. So a financial technological field pathways have started up to be open due to these codes, and there are certain authorities that have been also commissioned for that. And on the other hand, in 5-6 years, things have changed, of course, but we are preparing ourselves right now. Is that sufficient? No, of course, it's not sufficient. Of course, there are plenty of things that should be done. But if the fintech and sector of a country becomes necessary for a country and acts accordingly to that, then it will be also an actual competitiveness amongst the citizens as well. So as a result of this, it produces a service, and that service is going to be actually related with the client. It can be an individual or it can be a company. So if the clients generally want more good quality companies that give service from where they stand. It can be a bank, but now in this new world, it can be a fintech as well. So the race is about the service competitiveness. It depends totally to the need of the consumer or to the establishment, according to what they want to achieve, but you might look to the matter as well as how your ecosystem might work. And that is the reason why the necessary financial solutions should be made in good quality, and those companies have to be involved in our country. It can be a bank or another financial technological company, has to work also together in collaboration, find ways of solution, how to give these services. And the financial infrastructure also has to be very, very strong and flexible as well. Otherwise, you cannot compete with the outer world. If you totally integrate them as a whole, then it is necessary that the company invests in financial technologies. Otherwise, the citizens or the clients would actually get service from companies from abroad. So the loser will be, again, the governments or the citizens, the individuals living in that country. But as a result, there is a benefit indeed. It is important who that benefit is going to be served to and who is going to serve it. So that is the reason why, as a country, we need to actually draw a roadmap. I understand. So it seems likely the situation is going well in country, but we need to make more tangible steps. So we have to work on it a little bit more, I suppose. And now, there is also one thing that has been said, Mr. Sakam. Of course, these banks are going to earn money, and they were earning money by giving service to us. And sometimes we were getting angry with them because these services were not good in quality or they were very costly. But now we have a competition right now, even though the number is not high in Turkey, it have to undertake some certain duties of the banks. And on the other hand, and they might have also, they can also decrease also a certain amount of profitability. So from the side of the consumer, the client, for instance, the SMEs, the most important complaint of the SMEs is that they cannot actually reach the services easily. It could be costly, or it was difficult. And even in Turkey, there are some geographical changes, because when they want to take a loan, in some certain areas, the certain licenses of the real estates wouldn't be accepted in the past. So there were certain things that were not really quite abrupt. So how could the SMEs reach to those services? Of course, it's going to make an actually decline in your profitability, perhaps, but what will happen I'm talking about small and medium-sized enterprises in which 8 or 10 people are only working. Mr. Ruhi, let me first begin with the banks. The banks today will survive as it is today and in the future. But banking in the next coming period will transform and has to prepare itself to transformation. And as the banks, together with digitalization, is making the normal daily transactions of the clients. And they try to serve it through the digital side of the banking system. On the other hand, consultancy will become also very much important. And maybe in the future, a direct banking, rather than the banking customer relation personnel, we can talk about a new ecosystem for the clients that can actually give advice to the whole circumstances and can actually give knowledge about the fintech, or there might be some certain different types of deals that the banks can do with the other companies in which they can create trust to the customers. So those will be actually transferred to the customers. Of course, the client is not only going to be talking about bonds or loans, etc. Apart from that and beyond that, the company, for instance, if they want to open to e-trade, there would be some certain consultants in the banks that will help the clients. And about the prices and also from the income point of view, yes. And now customers in the digital world do not go to the offices of the banks, but they walk around digitally around the banks. And they check out the values or the interest rates of the banks, or they can also get information of the products of the banks, and they can find it from one single consolidated area. And there are certain companies that give that service. So if the first preferable place for a client are such companies, and then afterwards they continue getting to know the bank. And our products today, we shouldn't actually sell our products from over our own channels. Not only should we also sell our own products from our own channels as well. Even though some companies do want to reach that technological level, in which we see that the number of the clients are very high, where electronic trade numbers are high. In such areas, they accumulated a mass, and they will give access also their own accumulated customers to those companies. Not maybe only should we talk about the banking services, but the bank's own service has also their own clients, and they can also always give benefit in their own life cycle and can respond to their needs. And these are non-financial applications, and these non-financial applications can be found, can also be involved inside the banks. I'm going to be talking about the SMEs as well tomorrow. Of course, we need also with the APIs, with the open banking systems, and with other integration, we can give service to the SMEs, and we should do it so that we can actually bring value to those clients. And there are many products that we can serve as such. And our product range, in order to complete a product range, the fintechs have to have a good infrastructure and have to be experts in those infrastructures, particularly in niche areas. And those services can be presented from over the banks. And as a result of this, of course, there's some certain infrastructural arrangements being done and can be done on a central place from the BKM and can be opened to the institutions. And this SMEs, of course, reaching to financial sources is not easy for them, but in some certain areas, there are some these companies, the companies, the fintechs do not have actually a competency in order to give loans so far, but they can have an integration with the banks, and particularly in financing the bills, have yet started. And the SMEs, when they sell their products, just before selling the products from over one single structure, can receive offers from the banks and can provide their own financing structures. And or they can go to those banks, they can walk around the banks. Rather than doing this, however, a more democratic structure can be assured. And hence, in order to reach such services, certain hubs are right now being established. And the banks have to integrate themselves in such structures in order that they can present their own products. And that is the reason why I do believe that fintechs are very productive institutions serving the customers. And I leave the floor to you after saying this. Of course, when we talk about BKM, Dr. Soner Canko pops up to our minds. And however, we as well follow this closely as well. And we understand today's fintechs. Our friends were talking about it, and you talked about the past. What do you think about the future of fintechs? So Ms. Meltem, of course, has reached to a higher level, of course, and I'm going to ask a few questions when the time comes to Ms. Meltem. But what do you think about the future of fintech? Yes, thank you very much. I've taken great notes, by the way, from our valuable distinguished speakers, and I can briefly summarize my ideas to you right now. In a world where capitalism is growing rapidly, not only do the companies compete with each other, but also the sectors are competing with each other. And Meltem has said all the companies are going to be a bank. That's true. Open banking system and also the ongoing services, the financial services are going to be an elongation of another service. So that's not going to be difficult, and it's going to be very easy. As you might remember, since the 90s, the telecom companies was not available. First, they have moved the sound and the data, and then they said, well, this wouldn't be sufficient. Let's do something else. Let's do e-trade, or let's do e-banking, etc. And that's the reason why that happened in the whole world, not only in Turkey. And not much could have been done. And as a result of this, I have never seen any telecom company that has been successful less than their own business. So you have to move the sound and the data. Let's give you 200 rather than 100. And they said that, but do please do your work. And there is right now an intersectoral competitiveness. And each sector, one sector is trying to actually swallow another sector. For instance, the telecom says that I bought already finance. Now let me work on trade. And as far as I can understand from Serkan, in the banking system, the banking system is reaching out to non-banking systems right now. Now this is not zero or one or black or white. And the future of fintech is actually has to be done all the way perfectly and focused. I'm open to integration. I'm open to any flexibility and openness, not only in banking, but also I believe that all the sectors are going to be open to open data, to open integrations. Now, when I fly with an airplane from one place to another, I reject to pay for my flight or for my accommodation separately. I want to do it done in one single hand, but of course the calibrization shouldn't happen while doing this personally. That's my thought. And in the world, and as I see in our country as well, the future strategies are right now been developed accordingly to that. I am against this. I warn you, because the future is not a future as we knew in the past. The future needs more cooperation, more integration. And we are looking for another future that is rather different than today. Forget the past business models and look for the future business models. These are my own opinions about this. Well, so do you think that capitalism becomes more humanitarian? Or do you think that the capital is going to be distributed more equally? Well, that's my hope, but the sectors are not reading this like that. That's why I have doubt, and the sectors are still try to read the competition as it was before in the past. And I say to you that the competition is now no longer as we knew before. It has to be sustainable. I guess we do not know the meaning of the terminology sustainability. I tell you, we need to be more humanitarian. We need to be more sustainable. There's a big cake here. There are plenty of markets that have not yet been found or discovered. So we need to sovereign ourselves in places and fields that have not yet been discovered. And I just wanted to warn you about this through this panel. Ms. Sinem, while you were talking about these investments, in the second half of last year, there was a movement. Things have become more vital. And taking a look to E-Trade, taking a look to the numbers of E-Trade, it's immense. There's a great increase in Turkey, and we observe it in the globe as well. So why have we declined from the year 2019? Taking a look to the richest people in the world, they have become more richer. Now, these investors are not ordinary people. Jeff Bezos is going to do it, or Bill Gates is going to do it. And they have become rich. So the people who have invested here have actually become rich. Why did this stop? What is going on? Well, if we take a look to the number, this decline compared to 2019 is actually due to the first 6 months of 2020. It is the beginning of the pandemic. And we, as the world, try to understand what to do. We were thinking about our own health. We were talking about more soft things. And that is the reason why the investment units have not been actually debated upon. But after the second period, the fintech activities started to continue. Particularly, we had in May, it even exceeded the 2021. The 2021 May actually exceeded 2020. How does it see? It is obviously quite positive. So there has been 6 months of a cessation because nobody knew what to do. And after the second period, everything continued to work as it was. And that is the reason why there has been a decline last year. And I have taken also certain notes, and I also wrote Turkey in one hand and also in the e-money, and as for payments, open bankings. Well, we were talking about so many things. That's why, if we have time, and if you allow me, I also would like to contribute to the investment segment. To which segments more investment has been made on 2019, 20, and 21? And what will be our share? And what will happen in the future? And what will be the focus for the future? So in 2019 and on 2020 investments, as for the segments and analyze them, these investments, most of the investments part has been shared to the payments. It's similar in the US or Europe or Turkey. There is no difference here in general. So most of the form of investments were payments. And again, of course, digitalization and the dynamics of the clients was catched. It might be because that this sector was catching actually the customers and digitalization, and that's the reason why I suppose the most investments have been done on payments. And in the future, in the payments field as well, with different technologies and like blockchain technologies, when you focus on them as well, there might be a more offshore payment situation. And an open banking with the open banking developments, open banking will also have an integrated payment structure. This is what we are expecting in the payments. Payments will be the greatest part of the portfolio, but on the other hand, payments and also offshore payments will be the focus.
And last year and this year as well, we have already experienced this increase, and the insurance technology started to rise. So InsurTech, can we give an example from Turkey about InsurTech? Slowly but surely, some examples are emerging. And this is our own observation. Because of the pandemic, it started to emerge. Because we have all experienced that digitalization level of insurance sector is very far away from the finance sector. But due to pandemic, digitalization has become very indispensable, and as parallel to that, InsurTech investments started to take place. InsurTech is lagging a bit behind, but we have started to see the examples. For Turkey and Europe, the real market share will be possible after 2022. These are a bit early stage. It's going to be a bit late stage, I believe, and I think we will see it as of 2022. I guess you have a question. And RegTech took that place, regulation technologies. And in the upcoming period, I believe we are going to see this because finance sector is a very regulated sector, whether you want it or not. And also harmonization to the regulations require too much cost and expense. There are some advantages brought by the digitalization, and there are some disadvantages and risks brought by the digitalization, data privacy and weakness and vulnerabilities, and also some other risks for security. And also this KYC, know your customers. This is on the agenda of many international companies and also the regulations of the countries. These are indispensable to us, and these are also indispensable for the ones who want to work in this sector. You have to be in line with the obligations and regulations. Without increasing the structural cost, you have to be increasing your efficiency, and technological solutions in that respect will be much more preferred. Along with Brexit, we have started to see that in Europe and the UK, and RegTech will be ranked in the third place. But in the upcoming periods, in order to minimize the risks brought by the digitalization, RegTech will be much more rising. It will be ranked in higher places. I don't want to take much of your time. There are some developments about crypto assets. We are going to have another round. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. I have already taken my notes. Meltem says that all companies are going to be digital companies, and banks are not going to be intermediaries like they are today. I guess on that intermediary meaning, there is also that implication. Banks are also making things a bit harder. You said that companies are going to be turning into digital companies, finance companies, and what are the banks choosing for their roles? And I actually like human touch because talking to the people in the bank and negotiating with them about loans, for instance, I really like that. Yes, I like that. But in the new term, in the new period, they won't be available if your forecasts come true, if the transformation take place. So instead of that human touch, what are we going to have? So I should be just face-to-face negotiating with Mr. Sarkar, for instance. No, it is not that case. It is about this option. It is about having rights to select some options. Many people might say that I hate going to banks, but you are going to the banks in the United States. No, I was going to the banks in Turkey as well, not just in the United States. It is about having a right to select. It's all about options in the market. 20 years ago, nobody was using it. Nobody was using that right. In 20 years' time, many things have developed. But 20 years ago, computers, smartphones, telephones were not used, of course. If I had told you we would be having conferences with our phones and computers, you wouldn't believe me. I mean, in New York Times, they said that certain things are invented and there comes a big excitement, and it takes a bit time to understand the function of that thing. After that, there is an increase on the efficiency and there is an increase on the national income. That's why we are doing certain thing in that excitement. But it does not take place just in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. People adapt themselves to the changes. Now I'll switch into English.
So here's what's happening, right? And here's what's so interesting. It's not just that every company is becoming a digital company or a internet company. Every company is becoming a financial institution, a bank, but not only this, individuals, people can be their own bank. This is the idea of Bitcoin. When I used Bitcoin for the first time in 2013, I sent a transaction to a person I did not know on the internet at 2:30 in the morning on a Sunday evening. I could not have gone to a bank branch and done that. In fact, I don't think the bank would have even let me send a transaction. 25% of the world's population doesn't have a government issued identity. They can't open a bank account without a government issued identity. How are we going to bank those people? We need a different solution. Technology is the last mile solution. Cryptocurrencies, blockchain networks allow us to deliver financial services at the last mile through a smartphone or mobile device. 50% of the world's population doesn't have regular internet access. So how do we serve these people? There are fundamental structural challenges within our existing financial system that do not serve most people. So the issue here isn't about banks. Banks are very good at one thing, making money. That is the function of a corporation, is to make money for their shareholders. That is not the function of a blockchain. This is about giving people choice. If someone wants to go into a bank branch and negotiate with their banker to get, credit card or a loan, great. I don't want to do that. Millions of people around the world aren't doing that. What they're doing instead is they're using open software, right? That is transparent, permissionless, requires no approval from anyone, that allows them to transact peer-to-peer in an open global marketplace and find the best rates and the right products and services for them. It's about choice. And not only is it about choice, it's about re-architecting finance to turn institutions with their rules and their processes into layers of open source software. Already 60% of the banking technology stack is open source software. We're gonna make it 100% and get rid of the banks altogether. Now, some people will wanna use banks. Some transactions will require an intermediary. Some organizations, from a risk perspective, may need to use an intermediary like a bank. But for the 90% of use cases out there, and for a bunch of new use cases, by the way, that are emerging, that are not just about humans or corporations transacting, but machines transacting, there's a whole machine-to-machine economy that will exist in the next 10 years. There are billions of devices on the internet today. There will be trillions of devices on the internet by the time we get to 2030. Those are all going to have identities, and they're all going to transact on the internet as well. So we can't rely on these clunky, old-fashioned financial institutions to meet the need of a growing digital age. The last thing I'll just add that I think is really important is this, at the end of the day, is about people. We're talking a lot about governments and nation states. Bitcoin is the first digital nation state. We have millions of users, millions of members of our nation state who every day get together and talk online in open public forums about what they're building in this nation state. We have a robust economy. The Bitcoin network carries over $1 trillion worth of value, putting it squarely in the top 10 economies in the world. Every year, trillions of dollars of value are sent over the Bitcoin network and the Ethereum network and other crypto networks. That value, by the way, is exchanged 24/7, 365 without requiring a bank. And more importantly, companies that are building in this digital crypto space are very quickly becoming some of the largest financial institutions in the world. A peer-to-peer decentralized exchange called Uniswap is currently exchanging over $5 billion a day, making it larger than most exchanges that exist in our world. That is absolutely amazing. In my view, this is the future. People want choice, and people want the ability to transact, to interact online with who they choose, when they choose, how they choose. This is about giving people choice and enabling people to build what they want in a way they want on open source software, which in my view is already the future of finance. The fact that institutions and governments can't understand this transition is normal, because them understanding and accepting this transition is them understanding and accepting their increasing irrelevance in a world that is controlled not by institutions, but by people. If we think about the most powerful moments in human history, they have happened when a group of people get together to change the status quo. That is what's happening in finance. That's what's happening with money. Like, this is a revolution. It will be a slow and long revolution, but I firmly believe that at the end of this revolution, the world will look radically different. People, when working together, are more powerful. They're an unstoppable force, more powerful than any government, than any nation, than any bank, than any institution. And the fact that we have millions of people working together to create a new financial system in the crypto space it's the most incredible thing I've ever seen, which is why I've dedicated my career to it. And it's going to continue to happen. So orada bitireyim.
Well, yes, I want to ask a question to you. You have given your thoughts with a big excitement and enthusiasm. Of course, I'm affected. I'm impressed by that. And I mean, I'm terrified because the interest, I mean, the profits are decreasing, and there could be the social cost of it, right? Unemployment could occur. Yes, we can do this, but we can't say that if the cryptocurrency world can create employment to a lot of people, yes, we can support it, but it requires some smooth transition, right? Maybe it could be very old school thought, but it's a good question, but let me say that.
Most jobs today are bullshit jobs. 40% of jobs in the bank are compliance jobs. These are not high value jobs. The bigger shift that's happening is technology is changing how we do work and what work people do day to day. We see this already. Fintech is already eroding the market share of banking in key segments, right? Whether it's consumer finance, whether it's small to medium enterprise finance, trade finance, lending, credit, all of these segments are being disrupted. That's not going away. And the trend is using software to replace processes done by people. This is part of the transition. It's not just unique to finance, by the way, it's happening in every sector. And so the question is, if instead of doing bullshit jobs, we had people doing things of actual value, creating culture, creating art, creating society, would that not be a better use of our time and energy? I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a sociologist. I'm an investor and a business operator. So this is, not my forte, but this is not unique to just finance. It's happening in every industry. And again, I think the challenge or the response I would have here is, instead of, waking up at 8 a.m., commuting to your job, sitting at a desk and doing paperwork all day, every day for 40 years of your life, wouldn't it be better to spend your time on something more productive? So I think, again, the whole concept of how we work will evolve and will change. And I think that isn't a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. But again, complicated problems don't have easy answers. I don't have an easy answer. And unfortunately, this issue goes far beyond just finance or fintech. It's a broader systemic and societal issue. But the fact that we need institutions like universities and the fact that there isn't equality of opportunity in our world today is because it requires being somewhere physically. With the high quality of online education available today, with the diminishing importance and credibility of institutions in our world today, I actually think it opens up a massive opportunity for digital workers. Today, my company is mostly remote. Most of the companies I have invested in employ thousands of people around the world who work from Poland, the Philippines, Nigeria, Kenya. It doesn't matter where a developer is. If they can code, they can work, right? Code is a universal language. So again, I think the opportunity here is equality of access, the biggest population center in the world is not going to be the Western world. It's going to be the Eastern world and sub-Saharan Africa. These will be the most population dense centers in our world. And these parts of the world are educating young people and their population how to code and how to work online in this digital world. And again, I think this opens up equality of opportunity to a much larger population, because digital work, I think, is very much part of the new normal. I don't need to sit in an office with someone every day. We can work online. I can pay them online using Bitcoin. It's been really interesting. We can actually pay people in countries where there is no formal banking sector using cryptocurrencies. And there are a number of new job platforms emerging where people can do task-based work and earn cryptocurrency. So look, I'm optimistic that for big, bold solutions, we can find problems, we can find big, bold solutions. But again, this is not a problem unique to just financial technology. I think it's a broader societal and systemic issue related to the adoption of technology and the degradation of our institutions and universities.
Okay, thank you very much. I have taken my notes. If we have another round, I'll just give you the second option to deliver your opinions. Orhan Bey, this fintechs. We already discussed why are they going to be very important. We discussed that, but is Istanbul going to be a fintech hub? As you all know, there are some geographical features of Istanbul. That's why there are some projects to make Istanbul as a financial and technological hub. But up until this time, even though some high-rise buildings were built, we haven't seen a concrete result. Is it going to be possible? What do you think? And what must be changed in our country to make our country as a hub? Yes, we've understood good buildings are necessary, but they are not sufficient all alone. Maybe general economic and political situation of the country must also be rehabilitated, and there must be some developments with respect to that. What do you think about it? I mean, Istanbul could be, yes, a financial and a technological hub. It can be a center. But before than that, I just want to congratulate the enthusiasm of Meltem. It is not possible not to agree what he imagined. But there are some differences, of course, in our thinking. So at the essence, I just want to highlight one thing, and I'll go back to the essence of the issue. Financial technologies and certain instruments could not be just the very basis or an essence of technologies. It could be a financial institution, it could be a bank, it could be a technology company. So who produces that value, and could it find a return for itself? Could it find a correspondence for itself? I mean, I'm not talking about a bank dominant infrastructure, service, and customer structure, because this is not normal, and also the contrary of it is not normal as well. Just the single-handed management of the financial services by the technological companies, it is not normal as well. In Istanbul, actually, we trust ourselves in terms of financial technology. First and foremost, we have to see whether there are enough information and knowledge about financial and technological developments. I think we have to be proud of ourselves, because our companies have been awarded for many times, and our professionals have come to great places in abroad. We can see that we have a great labor and human resources and knowledge and information. We don't have a problem with respect to infrastructure. Reaching to capitals and human resources in the early stages, there are not big problems. Of course, there could be better situations, but finding an investment as I've stated before, it is not problematic. So what do we have at the latest part? Producing country politics and making it more sustainable in the long term, in a way that it can cherish the financial structure. We need to facilitate that. There are certain improvements with respect to regulations, but if we ask whether there is a country policy with respect to financial technology, where do you want to see financial technology 5 years in time? For instance, if you ask this question to me, Turkish financial technology should not be affected by the fluctuations, daily fluctuations. We have been affected by the cryptocurrency fluctuations very recently. I'm sure that it is a big burden on the minds of the regulatory people, because it made many people deceived by some people or some institutions. I'm sure that authorities and agencies should react in order to eliminate those risks, and they should provide a visionary project for future, and it must be encompassing the long term. Istanbul being the financial center of the country, and preparation of the financial strategy document, I'm sure will be very much helpful, because we have already made the road.
So all these policy integration, when we say that it's all done, daily fluctuations definitely will happen. We can have internal, external shocks, but in the end of the day, the companies will say that in Turkey and Istanbul, the necessary infrastructure for Istanbul being an attraction should be done, and then it can give encouragement to the existing companies to actually make their own investments. So we shouldn't only attract investments, but also companies should in Turkey go abroad. And that's the reason why if we have to criticize ourselves, we will have 55, 56 people in our union, and a very small amount of us have certain entrepreneurships in abroad. They first think that we want to actually flourish here in Turkey, and then we can go abroad. In such a mentality, it's not easy to make Turkey and fintech center. So we need to actually tell the story on how these seeds have been planted into Istanbul and then been widespread. So when I grow, I can be known, and later on I can go to abroad. People say, but that's a not good way of looking from this perspective. It's not good to look from this perspective. That's why the entrepreneurs and the companies have to be a little bit more bold in order to go abroad. And right now in this sector, the most important development is that people are right now making a visual, and actually recording an audio visual actually type of a relation. Now, the necessary financial technology and the technology company cannot do it because of the legislation. So that we can overcome that. If there's going to be an area of experience, indeed, a financial investment is necessary, and we need to put it within with a vision, with a long-term vision, and such as this is how we can make Istanbul as a financial attraction. Mrs. Sarkam, just after Ms. Meltem's speech, I can see that you have been shaking a little bit. And of course, for you, there is hope. We shouldn't actually definitely be that pessimistic. For those, how can the open banks or the banks can increase their profits for me, there is no problem. I go again to the banks and make my transactions. But there are people who have not made any kind of a transaction in banks. So how can you attract these youngsters? Open banking in the near coming future will bring a dynamism to the banking sector, and I have no doubt about that. And by the way, I would like to add, when we talk about open banking, what should I understand? Open banking is, in the first part of my speech, I tried to explain you, the owner of the data of the bank are the customers, and the customers are the actual owner of the data. And if the owner, if the customer approves, and with the integration made, I can share my data with another company, or I can give competency and authority to another company to reach to those data. It seems quite simple, but it's also the start of the whole change, which happened also in Europe and Turkey as well. We actually lag first a little behind, but then we run actually, and hence the Turkish Republic Central Bank is expecting our works up until the January 2022 first. And my data, if I want, if an added value is put upon, or if a contribution is going to be made, and if an authority has been given, and if I can trust in, because there are certain obligations that the company has to make, and if these obligations are met, then I can actually work together with a company. Like this company can say, I will be in a hardship right now, Serkan, and due to the data coming up from you from the past, I tell you that, well, you have such payments, and for that, you can pay back these payments, or I can look for a loan for you, and that company can search it from a bank, and from certain banks, there might be some certain loans that can be meeting the needs. So after the client can access to those payments, these institutions and these new players will create a value in very extreme parts as well. So will the banks earn money from this? And under each condition and under each circumstances, and even though there might be high limits brought by the Turkish Republic of the Central Bank, we are a little bit in constraint in some certain areas. For some institutions, it can be a different. Why? So that it can be advantages also in order to create competition as well for some certain sectors. Within the strategy document, there are 4-5 different fields. The first one is the financial productions and transactions to be easily accessed, to manage the finances, and thirdly, to make the clients reach to the loans easily, and to improve the total experience of the client. So these are areas where we can make cooperation. Some certain examples are also available in the world. As I said before, in which areas can we provide it to be used? In which institutions can they be used, particularly softwares, services, can be situated in our own premises, and we can actually give that service to our clients. And while providing it, maybe can we actually ask for a certain fee for this from the client? Yes, of course, if not rejected by the central bank. And we know that if the client knows that if this is adding value to its own life, then they definitely would pay for that value. In open banking, in particularly, fintechs are actually our friends. We do not want to open new actually offices, or this is not our aim. Our future is digital, and we need to give those services to the right clients and integrate it to the values and integrate these fintechs into our banking system. And of course, we can activate the structures of fintech in our own business. Regulations were regarded always as a difficulty or as a blockage. And the banking supervision institution has actually created a more flexibility. Well, of course, fairness is important here, as you know. And regulation is necessary for everyone. And regulation will provide the banks and also the fintechs to act flexible and also under certain conditions and regulations within certain limits. And this cooperation will definitely flourish in the future. Maybe our customers might think that the service is given from the Turkish Economic Bank, but on the other hand, that service has been received by a fintech, for instance. Yes, thank you. We don't have much time. Let us not exceed our time, and that's the reason why I'm going to ask a short question and have received quick responses. What do you think? What do you think that the client think about fintech? Do they trust the fintechs? Do the customers trust fintechs? Well, thank you very much. Well, this is an issue of cybersecurity. It is such an important layer that doesn't listen largeness or smallness, doesn't listen to actually institutions or SMEs. So if you do not increase your consciousness about security, cybersecurity, you will have a risk, and that can widespread throughout the whole country, and will create a gap of information, of data. Cybersecurity can give more harm to larger institutions, and particularly in the last years, the largest companies, the big brands, had actually security deficiencies, which reminds us that some data has been found in the executive board, etc. And that's the reason why it is going to be the first article of the agenda. It should be taken very seriously. And in order to do this, we need to raise our consciousness about this. We need to be curious about this. Otherwise, cybersecurity, even though you pay millions of dollars, doesn't matter whether you can protect the largest companies or public institutions, wouldn't work. It's an important culture. Hence the case, cybersecurity shouldn't be only regarded through, by fintechs, but also for all individuals or institutions. It's an important awareness. And I would like to congratulate you to put it into this agenda, but it should be the #1 article that we need to talk as a theme. Maybe next time we can do it. Yes, that would be great, because the most important problem, challenge of cybersecurity is that people regard this as a technological problem. And it has become the last article of the agenda. And that's the reason why in all decision givers rooms, this has to be actually dwelt upon. But you know, sometimes if you make a fault, that would be better. If you make a fault, that would be better than an offer. But yes, you're right. But that means that large companies would definitely diminish. I'm sorry, I have to close my screen right now. Yes, thank you very much and for sharing your ideas. Hopefully, I hope to see you next year. Thank you very much. I hope it was beneficial for all of you. And I also would like to thank all the participants for nourishing me. Sina, in the second round, you said that you wanted to talk about the crypto part of this matter as well. What is it? What that you want to say? Thank you, Mr. Ruhi. But please, short. Yes. Ms. Sarkhan has highlighted something. He was talking about regulation, and regulation, when we're talking about fintech and innovation, regulations are generally evaluated as a blockage. But in one side, particularly in financial world, if we think about technological world, of course, regulation is very much important in that manner. I do agree with you, Mr. Sarkhan, in that manner, because for crypto values, can say the same thing as well. Or for the digital money, I can say the same thing. And it is an economic value. Everybody right now has agreed upon it. Is Bitcoin important or not? People were thinking about making an investment or not. Maybe we were thinking about it more speculatively, but it's right now an economic value. And because it is not regarded very prominently important right now, is actually making decreasing the value of this. Of course, we are making certain definitions, but after these, we need to actually stand behind the definition so that it can actually, but it also goes that crypto money hasn't found its value because we were very speculative about this. But I can see right now that the states are actually working on this. In China, the Chinese public bank in Shenzhen has created a digital money and started testing it. The English Central Bank and the United States Central Bank, also a group of people from UK and United States are now making a roadmap about these crypto monies. That's the reason why the states agree that this is somehow on the table. And how can we be a part of this world and how can we control it? They started to debate upon it. That's the reason why the states will closely follow this matter. And that's my anticipation. And I also would like to thank you. Thank you, Ms. Madam. The security issue. I would like to ask a question about security. The fintech companies, throughout their activities, do they take their measures against cyber attacks? Well, fintech is new and people are getting more interested in it as clients. What do you say? That's a good question from cybersecurity. Bitcoin has never lost money. It's actually, when money is technology, it gives more trust. And as a last opinion, in our world, the only thing, what can you actually trust in? It's change, definitely, because the world is going to change as time goes by. And there is a great transformation right now. And finance and the center and everything is changing and around the money. And we need to be open to it and prepared for it. Turkey as a country, I believe, from the crypto side and from regulation, has access to a good side. It's good for Turkey, for Turkish finances, economy, and for the startups and for companies. But in some countries, just like in the United States, we are not very much ready for such changes. Not everybody is ready for it. That's very much important. And I would like to say that you need to be open to changes. Money is changing, and money will be changing from the side of technology and from what about trust? Who would you trust? A bank? A company? Open source software? And technology? I trust technology. I'm sorry, but I would choose technology. If you say no, I don't trust technology, then it wouldn't be right because you're doing this job. No, it doesn't mean that I'm in this business. It's about technology. Technology always, open source technology always is more trustworthy than a closed company because everything is open. So I do not want to say anything to anyone. I'm open a new path. Those who want can choose it. Those who want to choose a bank can choose it. But in 10 years after this option has been opened, I believe that more people will choose crypto and technology because the world is changing, and that's absolute. Finance is changing. Well, thank you. Now, Mr. Burhan, can Istanbul be a fintech hub? And you said yes, it can be, if necessary conditions can be provided. So, in the country, has there happened any kind of a situation like this in a country where the different demography is just like Turkey? What do you mean about such an incident? For instance, a fintech company has started up, etc. This is totally about the ecosystem of a country. And you need to listen to this, you need to understand the players of the sector, and you need to actually talk about it. And in abroad so far, of course, those who did have a financial center have right now a fintech as well, a fintech center as well. But in Turkey, a similar demography like Turkey is not that I know, but I believe we can do it. Maybe we will be this first. Of course, we have every tool, we have the vision. It's only about the time that we have to, it's about time that we do it. Mr. Sarkam, What about security, cybersecurity in Turkey, about banks? And such cyber attacks have been such cyber attacks are targeting banks in the last period of days and times. So I know that the banks are very much hardly working on taking measures. But very briefly, what is the importance of cybersecurity? It's a new subject for us and for you. What should be done? What has been done? Not only banks, but also big e-commerce websites, telecommunication operators. I guess, well, sometimes they can be very systematically be made when we talk about attacks. And what should be done is what it's cannot be summarized with one or two sentences. Of course, we need to think about all the investments about it. The data shouldn't be going out of an organization. That's the first, and also no other port should actually leak into your structure. There are technical issues about this, but of course awareness is very much important. A new innovation, while making a new innovation, while making a new application, all of these attacks should be thought about. It is actually a part of the processes. It's not a luxury, or it's not something that can be thought after everything is said and done. Since the beginning of every job you do, you need to actually invest on these types of attacks, and you need to work on it. Data, particularly data of a customer, is precious for us. And if that data goes out of the institution, will definitely break the trust in between. In open banking, again, these data is going to be more democratic, but similarly to that, I believe that these data with the same level of security and importance will be kept. That's a very big issue, but I just wanted to actually support it with just a few words. Thank you very much, distinguished panelists and distinguished audience. I would like to thank to our panelists for their vision, and I also would like to thank you as listeners to this panel for keeping up with us. Thank you very much. Hope to see you next year.